Hello, everyone. Today I wanted to discuss passing and passing privilege. I think something that is important to note and something that is prevalent in the LGBT community, more so in the trans community, is the concept of passing. So let's start with what is passing. Passing is the idea or a way of life, so to speak, or another word that is a synonym would be living stealth. So when you're doing any of these things, when you're passable or if you're living stealth, it pretty much means that when you occupy a public space whenever you occupy a space where other people are and your gender identity is not questioned, that means that you are passing effectively. Now, is passing a good thing or is it a bad thing? I think ideally every trans person, I can't speak for every trans person, but I think for the majority of trans people would like to have the privilege of passing. I think the whole point of wanting to transition and wanting to feel more confident in yourself and more comfortable in yourself, it all kind of stems firstly from the gender binary of man and woman, but then that breaks it down to, for trans people, passing. And I think when it comes to passing and when it comes to not having your gender identity policed or questioned, I think that that is a very powerful thing. I think it is something that unfortunately not every trans person will get to experience. If I'm just speaking honestly, and the reason that is because not every trans person is afforded the same opportunities and resources. And like I mentioned earlier, resources will be the biggest component in your transition and how far, depending on how far you want to go in your transition. I think I want to briefly kind of touch on people's transitions and goals that certain people have. I think that it is completely fine and normal to have goals and aspirations in your transition. However, I think we all, myself included, have to be realistic about how much we can effectively change due to time, finances, resources, once again, and how it is that you just view yourself in general. Like, you cannot let all of your happiness be determined on how far you are able to transition, whether you have money or not. And I think that's important to note because I'm just going to speak from the trans femme side. There are trans women that have gone through a complete transition, hormones, full SRS, GRS surgery, and still unhappy or still wishing that they didn't take that step to have SRS or really any surgery. And I think that all stems from how you view yourself and how much you love yourself before you start your transition. And that is so important because that will determine for the rest of your life how much you love yourself and how much you value yourself. You should not ever place that value on a surgery or something that is fleeting, because once you have that surgery, even leading up to it, the excitement, the adrenaline, the happiness, all of these feelings, they're so important. And for you to set yourself up to be so ready for this, thinking that it's going to change your whole entire life, which it may, I do not want to come off as pessimistic. I just want to be realistic about this, because we have to be realistic about our transition goals. We have to. We can be the one person in our own lives that can cause ourselves to mentally be so much more unhappy than before starting our transition. So I say all of that to say, passing privilege. I think that when it comes to passing privilege, it is something that should be used for the greater good of the rest of the trans community. What I mean by that is, like I mentioned in one of my previous videos on women telling their stories and not being taken seriously or not being heard. And I think that of course translates into trans women and people listening to them or not based on how passable they are, or how pretty they are, how beautiful they are, what surgeries they've had, or how far they've gotten in their transition, when honestly we should be listening to all trans women, whether they are just starting, whether they haven't had any surgeries, whether they don't want any surgery, whatever their transition looks like to them, that should be validated, and it should not be invalidated just because of what you see on the outside. So when it comes to myself, I try to always use my privilege in a way that will benefit other trans people, especially other trans women, especially other trans women of color. Because, like, for example, at work, any job that I've had after starting my transition, I've never disclosed that I'm trans to my coworkers or my employer. And that in itself is a privilege, and I recognize that. So for me to use that privilege effectively and in a way that is not only beneficial to me, but beneficial to others, is to, when discussions about LGBT people come up, or specifically trans women, that is when it's time for me to use my voice, and for me to be the one that is offering knowledge and understanding, and try to help other people be more empathetic and sympathetic to the trans cause. And for me, if I were to be outed per se at my job or something, I don't know that I would deny it. I don't know that I would for me it would change anything, because of, well, firstly, the job that I have now, I would be protected under the law, because that could be considered discrimination, and that would be a whole, situation. So I think also when it comes to, like I mentioned in one of my other previous videos about going out and, being with my girlfriends and stuff like that, privilege can be safety. Depending on where you are and who's around you, and not knowing how someone may view trans people, being able to pass effectively that affords you safety in a lot of situations and in a lot of different ways. So I think if you are a trans woman and you have a certain amount of privilege, please use that privilege effectively. Please use it to educate others. Please use it to help your sisters that are just starting their transitions, or the ones that may not look as passable. It does not mean that they're any less valid. It just means that we need more understanding in this world, and you have to be the one doing that, because people will listen to you, as sad as it is, because you're attractive. So use that to your advantage. And yeah, that's pretty much all that I wanted to say. I just wanted to make like a really quick video and just say how I felt about passing and passing privilege and living stealth. So yeah, if you guys have any questions regarding this, or if you want to know anything else, please message me or leave a comment down below and I will try my best to answer that question. And you guys have a great day or night wherever you are. Bye.